Hello, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the Authentic Podcast. Today I have a new guest by the name of Dave Posin. Dave Posin is the current president and I think owner of Soldierfit, which is a local gym franchise within our area in the DMV. I think they may be in multiple states, but he'll talk to you about that a little bit. I really wanted to have him on the podcast. I've known him for a while, but we haven't had a chance to actually sit down and have a real conversation. And I think that he has a lot of knowledge in the small business space and the fitness space that I think I can learn from. So I figured I'd pick his brain. So thank you for joining.
I'm fired up. And kudos. I know you guys can only see us, but this is a beautiful setup. Usually when I do podcasts, I'm sitting in my home office, the screen in front of me, or I'm sitting uptight in a chair. I feel like I can relax a little bit. This is nice.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I always start out just by, asking about your background and letting us and me and the audience know a little bit more about yourself. So what can you share?
Yeah. So where do I start? I'm local to the Maryland area. I was born in Indiana, but only lived there for a few years. I grew up in Rockville. Sports was like a big part of my upbringing. Mm-hmm. I got two kids. I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old daughter who's 8. My son is 5. And, I'll talk a lot about sports in terms of how it developed me in terms of like character values and things like that. And that's actually how we met was through martial arts, which was a huge piece of my life as well. And we can kind of dive into that too. But yeah, I think just that is so powerful. And that was honestly my identity for a while. Mm-hmm. I played football in high school, played football in college. And then when I got out of college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. My whole life up until that point was all sports, football, like where I went to school, what I did on a daily basis, what I trained for was all football. And I won't say I was necessarily lost after college, but I had no clue what to do. So I went on job interviews, just kind of the natural course of action. And I interviewed for like selling copiers, mortgage companies, and things like that. Interesting enough, we've all seen the movie Wolf of Wall Street, right? This was way before that, by the way. But the guy on one of the interviews hit me with, "Sell me this pen."
Oh, really?
Yeah, I froze. I wish the movie was out at that time. I would have crushed it. I completely failed that and didn't get the job, obviously. And so then I stumbled into a gym that I had trained at in high school, and I got a job doing membership sales. Okay. So I excelled in that. I was pretty darn good, and that's how I met my future business partner, Danny. So I sold memberships for a while, and then I excelled, and I got a job as a general manager. Mm-hmm. So I kind of got to see the fitness world, which is my industry now, from a lot of different places, right? I got to see it from the training side, which I did in high school, the sales side. When I graduated, the general manager side, so learning like leadership, different things like that. I got to see an overall like larger scope. And then they had a job available called area director, where I would now step out of the general manager role and kind of see multiple locations from the outside. So it actually got me able to kind of see the business side of the house, which I learned a lot from a 30,000 square foot view. Yeah. Now I was running multiple locations, multiple different teams and things like that. And, throughout that time, my business partner, Danny, we got together and we really wanted to kind of start our own thing. And for me personally, I felt like I was stuck where I was. Mm-hmm. There was a ceiling, and I just couldn't see any room for growth. And so this was kind of the best path forward. Okay. And we had seen what the group fitness was doing in the big box gyms and how it like created such a tight community feel. People that would come in the group acts, they're all fired up, they're high-fiving, like smiles on their face when they come in and leave. And I'm like, man, this is good energy. Yeah. Like, what if we could just kind of ball this up and instead of all the other stuff, just focus on that. Yep. And then his military background, he served tours in Iraq, first team to the Pentagon. He's got an incredible story. Yeah. He would be a fantastic guest to have on here as well. But we said, look, I think we can take this, and I don't want to say do it better, but also take his military experience and what he's learned and kind of tie those things together.
Yeah.
So we were actually sitting in the office, and CrossFit was real popular at the time. We were like, we were trying to find something that ended in fit. Right? That was like the big thing back then. This is 2007, right? And so we're like, military vision, Soldierfit. And as soon as I said it, like both of our eyes lit up.
You came up with the brand.
And then I went straight to the USPTO.gov trademark website, fired it up, trademarked it right away, like super quick. And then we were kind of off to the races. There's obviously developments to that we can get into there. But yeah, that's kind of like the origin story of me and, where Soldierfit came from.
So let's back up a little bit and talk about your background. So you said you grew up in Rockville, and
Yep.
what did you play? I know you played football, but
I played football. I played in high school.
Were
I
you a
played
linebacker?
Running back.
Running
Well,
back.
thank you for the compliment. I'll take it. Right. Linebacker physique, maybe. I don't know. Not quite there. But played running back, and I played strong safety in high school.
Okay.
And then in college, I actually played a little bit of strong safety in college, but running back was my main position.
Okay. And you went to Denison for a while, right?
I did a year in Denison. I got recruited pretty heavy there. I enjoyed it. Honestly, I didn't feel like it was like home for me.
Okay.
To be honest, I felt a little stupid.
Okay.
It is a pretty high-end
school.
education school, right?
It's our rivals.
And I don't consider myself a dumb person by any means, but I certainly I didn't feel like I was on that level from like a book smart standpoint. I'll remember actually we went up early for the football team, and I didn't know anybody, and we were all sitting at the table, shooting the breeze. I'm thinking like, hey, this is football talk, guy talk, and all of a sudden like they start talking about like grades and school. And then they're like bragging about their SAT scores, and everyone's talking about their SAT scores. And I'm like, just kind of eking in the corner a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I got over 1,000. I think it was like a 1050 or something like that. But these guys, 1,200, 1,300. And so just kind of from that point on, it wasn't a good start. But another reason was I was playing running back, and they had a passing offense. So
It didn't fit.
I think they passed 90% of the time. So I transferred to Western Maryland College, which is now McDaniel, and then I kind of finished my career there on that side of the house. I started out as an exercise science major, and then my mom thought it was similar to like basket weaving, and so she was like, "Look, I'm not going to
pay for this.
I'm not going to help pay for your college if you're going to take a class like this." I was like, "Mom, you don't understand." She's like, "Nope." So then I changed to I got a master's in business and then a minor in communication, and I did some other like educational stuff after that, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when did you start martial arts? Because if I recall correctly, you actually fought a little bit, or at least once, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So you were doing martial arts for a while to get to that point.
Yeah. Well, I started getting into jujitsu, and I was going hard. I was doing the gi in jujitsu, which I hate now, by the way. And then I hurt my shoulder, so I took some time off. And then at Fitness First Health Clubs, there was a couple guys like Nick Gomez.
Oh, yeah.
I think Danny was training there before. They were training over at Evolve, and I was like, let me check this place out. So I went and I met Master Mike.
Yeah.
He welcomed me with open arms. I felt at home.
Yeah.
And at that time, I actually had a membership somewhere else. And if anyone knows Master Mike, this guy is the most generous human being on all of earth. He's like, look, you're paying there, like your contract. I still had a contract there. He's like, I'll let you train for free until your contract ends.
Very nice. Yeah.
I was like, done. Boom. And it's been home for me ever since. Yeah. And, for those that don't know the story, I mean, he's really the reason why Soldierfit is still standing.
Yeah.
There was a time where we were going to fold up shop. We were training clients out of Fitness First. I was still kind of behind the scenes because I was still working there, but they had changed their personal training department. Before, they had allowed independent trainers to train out of their location, and then they shut it all down. You had to be an employee in order to train. And so essentially, like Danny was doing all the training, like Soldierfit had nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And Evolve was the next home. And really kind of the story evolves with Danny fighting and kind of earning Master Mike's respect and trust. And he allowed to bring Soldierfit into Evolve Academy, free of charge, mind you, in the beginning. And that's kind of what catapulted. I'll never forget, like we set up a class because we had to run the off times. Right. And so I think our off time was like 7:30, 8:30. It was 8:30 at night or something like that, was because the last Evolve class ended at 7:30. So we're like, all right, 8:30, that's what we got, right? We got to make it work. You know what I mean? So we wrote up a workout and we're like thinking like 5 people are going to show up. There was like 30 or 40 people at the door.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And we were like, man, we got something.
Yeah.
Like this thing could hit. And then it just kind of went from there.
Yeah. So speaking of that, in the infancy stages, you had a bit of a business background, but I've learned that even what you learn kind of in school in terms of business, while it's useful, especially like accounting, things like that, a lot of the stuff you have to learn on the job. And I guess this is a question for you. What do you think is the most important part of a business in the infancy stages? Is it the sales? Is it brand marketing and brand recognition? Is it actually the product itself? I know it all goes together, but
Yeah.
you have an idea, you have something that's going on, how do you actually get it out and get it to grow?
That's a good question. And I'll back up first, but I do want to save that. You kind of asked me where I learned a lot of, what I learned. So both of my parents or grandparents were small business owners.
Okay.
On my dad's side, they owned a bakery and delicatessen in Washington, D.C. called Posin's.
Oh, okay.
Multiple generations. And then my mom's dad owned a sporting goods store in Indiana. So I guess you could say it's in my blood.
Yeah.
I was young when those businesses were around, so I didn't necessarily learn a lot on the business side. But, my parents obviously taught me a lot. They kind of transitioned into that. So, but most of the stuff that I learned, it's definitely on the fly, 100%. I think self-education is probably the most important thing for a business owner. Okay. A lot of people talk about growing your team, but if you're not growing yourself first, you're going to be limited to where you grow your team. And I wish some of the things that are available now were available when I was younger, like mentors and things like that. They weren't a public-facing thing back then. You kind of had to know somebody behind the scenes in order to find one. Yeah. Now they're everywhere. Okay. And it's a blessing and a curse. Like, since they're everywhere, there's obviously some really, really good ones. And then some people that just talk and they have no real life experience. But that's for another story. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for people to collapse time. Okay. Things that took me multiple years to learn, people can now learn in half the time or even less by just speaking to people that have the experience. And even podcasts like this. There's so much knowledge and information out there for people to consume to be able to learn. Right. You just have to put the time in and make sure you're following the right stuff. Right. But there's also the flip side where there's, again, so much information that people are now like, they're bouncing from thing to thing, and they're not really focusing on one thing. Okay. They're consuming so much data, but they're not taking action on any of it, if that makes sense. So my only piece of advice is just find something and then follow that. Okay. And if it doesn't work, either fight through it, right? If it's a speed bump, don't make it a roadblock. Yeah. Or find something else and follow that. Okay? Because knowledge is not power. We always say knowledge is power. Okay. Knowledge is knowledge. Okay. Knowledge is nothing until you implement it and take action on it. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just knowledge. It's in your head, right? Mm-hmm. So, your original question, I guess, was not that. It was more so, what's the most important thing, whether it's product, sales, marketing in a business? I think every industry is different. You have to have a good product. Yeah. Because I don't care how much you sell, how much you market. If there's no product to back that, it's all going to fall apart, right? Yeah. But you also don't have a active product if you're not selling it. Right. If there's no one to buy or consume your product, then there's really nobody to help. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I'd say the biggest skill for someone to learn would be sales, because it's multifaceted. Yeah. It can transition into the entrepreneur world. It can transition into the corporate world. It's just a very, very important skill to learn. Mm-hmm. And now when I teach sales, it's one of the things that I do. I do for gym owners. I do for other business owners. It's funny when I talk about sales, and maybe I can ask you the question. You know, what comes to your mind when you hear the word sales?
Well, when I think of selling something, it's convincing a person that they need what you have, right? So it's not necessarily selling it. I look at it backwards. It's always like, well, what do you need, and how can I help you get what you need? And then you wanting to get it almost becomes inevitable, right? Rather than me trying to tell what I have is so great, and then it's a shiny object, and maybe you can attract somebody. I always try to look at it the opposite way, and I think that's the best way of selling. But I mean, again, this is one of the reasons why I have you on the podcast. These are not my strong suits, especially when it comes to sell. I'm much more inward. I'm much more of I call myself a mule. I'm more of the guy that works rather than gets out and is more public facing.
No, I think you answered it perfectly. Usually when I ask that question in a room full of people, there's a negative connotation, right? Sales, negative, right?
Yeah.
Convincing somebody of something that they don't want, right? Slimy, sleazy, used car salesman. That's not sales. Like everything that we do is sales. Mm-hmm. When you shake someone's hand and you say, how you doing? And you answer them, technically you're selling them on the fact that you're having a great day, right? So everything that we do is sales. And so we have to think about it the exact way that you said, right? How can I better serve this individual? Because everyone has a problem, right? Otherwise they wouldn't come to you. They have some problem. And then if you're providing the solution that you think is best to solve their problem, that's selling, right?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily, I mean, I guess convincing is the word that someone would use, but you're really just having a conversation with the individual, finding out what their pain points are, right? Because you have to find out how deep the problem is. And there's a line that I love, right? People don't make a change or they don't buy something until the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So if they don't understand where their pain is on a scale of 1 to 10 when their current situation, it's not going to be enough to move the needle in order to make the change. Because change is hard.
Yeah.
No matter if you're talking about fitness, like it's hard.
Yeah.
Like if you haven't worked out in a while and you've never worked out, like, man, just to muster up the courage to step into a gym or step on your treadmill at home and do it, it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I've learned to appreciate that over the last few years, because with something that's natural for you or me, it's not necessarily natural for other people. And the further down in the hole you are, it's like, why am I going to pay somebody to go through pain and misery and whatever? And I know long term it'll help, but like getting over that initial step of just starting is a hard barrier for a lot of people. It
is hard. It is hard. And the way that I see it and the way that I teach my guys is like, we have a greater responsibility to sell these people, to make them change, because they're not happy where they are. They need the change. And just being like, hey, it's okay and nice, like it's usually not enough to let people make the change and make their own decision to do it. They need a little bit of pushing. They need a little bit of encouragement. They need a little bit of like, we're going to do this together. I'm here for you. If they don't have that, everybody would be in shape.
Yeah.
If it was so easy to join a gym or get like, no one would be walking around unhealthy.
Right.
But, by 2030, over 50% of America is slated to be morbidly obese. Our own kids can't even pass a simple physical fitness test.
Yeah, I know. And
so, I mean, this is, at least in my industry or anybody watching that is in the physical fitness industry, I mean, this is a powerful, important thing that we are doing to get people healthy and in shape.
In this country. 100%.
Yeah, and it's and to me, I at least feel like fitness is the foundation. If you got to take like the bottom of a pyramid or the downside of an iceberg, like you have to have some sort of foundation, and your health and fitness to me is the foundation for everything.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about the way that you look, right? It's the way that you feel about yourself inside.
Yeah.
And you can't help other people unless you feel good about yourself. Yeah. And so if we have people walking around that just hate the way that they feel about themselves, don't like themselves, they're going to project that outward,
Yeah.
you know, and then it's just a spiral,
Yeah.
you know. So when I talk about fitness, it really isn't the physical side.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we like to look good,
Yeah.
you know, but I think it's just more mental. I'm sure you see it the same, right?
100%. And I see it from another angle as well, just because of my life experiences. Nothing matters once your fitness or once your health erodes. Nothing else matters but your health. And that's when you talk about being foundational. I think that's one of the easiest ways to see it. Your job, your relationships, how much money you have, your quality of life, none of it means anything once your health erodes. That's the only thing that matters at that point. And sometimes people don't recognize that until it's too late. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
No, that's deep.
it's true.
It's true though.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, people that are sick and on their deathbeds, like that's when
Yeah.
it hits you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, 10 years later, you don't really think about that until it's too late. And you talk about the quality of life. A lot of times we talk about like longevity.
Yeah.
Like I want to live till I'm 80 or 90. Well, if the last 20 years of your life are spent curled up on a couch,
Right.
not able to be active, like
Right.
what does that even mean? Like,
Right.
what are those 20 years? So you want quality of life.
And that's funny that you say that because probably my wife is probably the only person that knows this. But I always see myself, if I had to imagine myself from me looking out, I see myself as a grandfather. That's really where I think my personality comes. I think I'll be a really, really good grandfather one day. But I want to enjoy those years. And I think the decisions you make now are going to reflect in 20 or 15 years in the quality of life you have when you're in your 60s, 70s, 80s. And I have two grandparents, luckily, thank God, grandmothers who are in their 90s. And they had two different life experiences. And I can use those as examples of someone one is really, really highly religious, never smoked, never drank, never even wore pants. She's literally one of these people, preacher's daughter, like old school. Lady.
Never wore pants.
Never wore pants. Never
Okay.
watched a movie.
Wow.
I mean, completely straight arrow.
When you say never wore pants, what do you mean?
Because in her generation, women didn't wear pants. They wore dresses. And she's old
Okay,
school,
okay.
you know?
I got you.
I've never seen her in a
I
pair
got
of pants in my life. You know, but her ability to get around. I remember my wife and I were in New York. They're both out of Brooklyn, and I was playing soccer. I was fit, you know, and this was probably 20 years ago.
You
So
were fit?
Well,
Look at you, man. You are fit.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. But she was probably in her mid 70s, and she wanted to take my wife Lucy around all the sites in New York. And New Yorkers, they don't have cars, you know. Usually, they just take public transportation and buses. And she was telling us, okay, we're going to go to the World Trade Center. We're going to go to Statue of Liberty, and my wife and I couldn't keep up with her. She's like, you got to cross the bus because we got to take this, you know, across the street. We got to take this bus to this train. And we were just trying to keep up with her. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this lady's in her 70s. And
Nice.
she was completely blowing us out of the water. And I want that, you know, but for me to get to that point where my kids have kids and I can enjoy my kids' kids, I have to take care of myself now.
Yeah.
So, and a little bit, it has to be, you know, I think people don't think long term. They think about the moment. And don't plan for the future. Because if you did, then you would take fitness more seriously.
Yeah, but
So-
but think about what you're saying. Even more so, like us as adults have such a great responsibility to be healthy and fit, because where you learned being healthy and fit is important, you learned from your grandmother,
grandparents, yeah.
right? And a lot of people don't have that in their life.
Yeah.
You know, they grew up maybe with parents who didn't make that a priority.
Yeah.
You know, they never saw their parents work out. They never saw their parents eat right. And so then they learn these unhealthy habits. And then again, if they continue on with those unhealthy habits, they're passing it down to their kids and their kids.
Right.
So we talk about like generational wealth a lot of times.
Yeah.
People are always like, oh, let's plan for the future, for savings and money. Super important, by the way. You have to do that. But generational health is equally as important. And it has to start with you.
Yeah.
So if anybody here is listening, like, it's not just getting in shape for you. Like you have a greater responsibility for everybody around you and everybody who comes after you.
And to that point, another thing that I'm keenly aware of is one of the things that motivates me the most is trying to make sure that my kids are okay, right? And that's what I get up. That's why I work hard. That's why I save. That's why I do a lot of the things that I do. But I realized, bringing it back to what I said, that health is kind of wealth, and once that your health erodes, you'll have nothing else. I can easily become, building up all these assets, doing all this stuff, I can easily become a liability to my kids. If I lose my health, and some of it's unavoidable, but if I can avoid it, if I end up losing my health in my 60s and 70s, it's going to be my kids who have to take care of me. Yeah. My kids, and it's expensive in this world, and I don't want to be a liability for them. I want to try to be an asset for them. So taking care of myself is part of that. Just as like you said, just as important as saving and putting things in place, making sure that I'm okay, so they're not worrying about me, taking care of me, spending their energies and times and resources trying to make sure that I'm okay in my last years.
That's what it's all about. That's a responsibility that we take as parents.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah,
love it.
So let me ask you, switch subjects. So you guys had a few gyms open, and you were really rocking and rolling as far as I could see from the outside looking in, and then COVID hit. Yeah. And when COVID hit, it really affected the fitness industry the most because you weren't allowed to have a lot of people in there.
Yep.
Can you tell me about that time? What was that like as an owner of gyms and trying to navigate that from a business ownership side?
Yeah, weird time. A lot of unknowns. It's interesting. I remember when they were talking about it, I wasn't concerned at all. Uh-huh. I was like, this is going to blow over. Yeah. My business partner, Danny, was like, nah, this is not going to blow over. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, they can't shut us down for that long. Are you
Right.
kidding me?
They said it was going to be 2 weeks.
Needless to say, I was like, 2 weeks, we're good. Like we can kind of weather this storm. And thankfully, we saw the writing on the wall, and so we started to pivot. Right, the big word of COVID, and we started doing online training. So before they shut everything down, we built a studio. Built a studio, everything. Oh, wow. We were throwing things together. We started filming videos. We were preparing everything. So we were slightly ahead of the game when that happened. But it was hard from the way that our culture is built is so much relying on like teamwork, camaraderie, high fiving, like working together, touching each other. Like it just wasn't the same. Yeah. So that was really, really hard. And, as a person or a business owner, every day I spend inside the location around my team, around my guys, like around the members, high fiving, vibes are good. To now all of a sudden, like I'm in my box in my house. Yeah. Like talking to people through video, talking to people through home. So internally that was a battle as well, for sure. But during that time, I remember like I was just as many resources as I could find, as many people as I could talk to, I just dove in. Okay. And I found as many grants that were available, as much financial assistance that was available. The communication to the team at the time, the communication to the members at that time was so, so important. And our members, everyone says this about their members, our members are the best. Mm-hmm. I mean, we had people that were still paying for us because we switched to online. We were like, hey, look, guys, we can't service you in person, but like we don't want to give up on you. Like we still want to provide fitness. So we're going to create this online template. Like we created a whole online platform with videos and, workouts and everything. Like we were doing live videos, streaming, filming. And, some people utilized it and did really well. And there were some people that didn't use it, but was like, look, I still want to support you guys. Yeah. And so I'm going to still continue to pay, even though I'm probably not going to use those services. Yeah. And without that, we would not have been able to get through 100%. But I remember it was just like, God, phone calls and emails to landlords. Because remember, like our members aren't paying us, but the landlords still want their money, right? There's still bills to pay. There's still dues and subscriptions to pay. And so, trying to figure that out, whether it was rental abatement, whether it was kind of payback terms, that was certainly a challenge.
Okay.
You know, we had some landlords that were really, really good that worked with it, and some that weren't. So I learned a lot on that side of the house.
Okay.
I wouldn't say like negotiation, but I guess that's really what it comes down to. Just kind of having conversations with these guys, and you know how to formulate like a professional emails and the right wording and things like that, and talking to other gym owners, and you know kind of figuring out what they're doing and how they've approached things and best practices, and you know we finally got through it, and we transitioned people to like outdoor fitness, and then brought them in, and then we had little boxes and squares that people had to stay in, and so we really had to like completely 180 our whole model.
Yeah.
And then finally things got back to normal, and then the spike happened, and so we were kind of up and down. But yeah, it was a challenging time for sure.
Yeah.
But it opened our eyes on a couple things. There's some revenue streams that we do now that would not have been available without COVID.
Okay.
So there's definitely some what's that word? Silver lining,
Yeah.
I guess is what they say, right? We now have an online program. We do online coaching now. We coach other business owners. We do, you know, coaching, like life coaching, fitness coaching for people as well. And none of that, if COVID didn't happen, I don't think that would have been something that we do.
Yeah.
And it's a very successful part of our program as well, because now we can service people that aren't just in this immediate area. Mm-hmm. Our outreach and our span is just so much greater. Because there's people all over the world that need help, right? And for us, we were only allowed to help people that were 5, 10, 15 miles away.
Yeah. I think that's incredible, the way that you guys were able to, like you said, find the silver lining, but also build other businesses out of it, rather than just, you know, being caught. You were able to problem solve on the you know, and I think that takes tenacity, and it takes the right people with the right type of drive to just look for solutions rather than complain about the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's having a good team.
Yeah.
Like, trust me, if I was by myself, there's no shot I would have done that, right? It's having a good business partner.
Yeah.
You know, it's having someone to be able to bounce ideas off of. You know, come up with some really bad ideas, and hey, this is not a good one, right? Or implement the bad ideas and be like, oh man, that wasn't good. Like, we got to go back to another thing. And I think that's, you talk about like business lessons. What do they say? Imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. And I think this is where small business owners fail, and people that want to start something up, is they're trying to make everything perfect. And they're spending too much time on the sidelines figuring out the plan before just getting in the game.
Yeah.
And business rewards two things. It rewards speed.
Okay.
And it rewards repetition and experience. So while you're sitting on the sidelines trying to figure out what the plan is, someone else is executing an imperfect plan. They're getting reps. They're failing. They're figuring it out.
Yeah.
And so by the time you get in the game, they've done messed up 10, 15 times. They have 10 times the experience that you have, and they're already way ahead of you.
Yeah.
So now your perfect plan is null and void because someone else they beat you to the punch, and now they have more experience than you. And they have more grit because they've experienced failure and they were able to overcome that.
That's a really interesting point, because it's one of the things, you know, I'm starting a new venture, and it's one of the things that I worry about, because when you're starting something new, there are a million things that you have to do, right? And so the way that the analogy I use is, sometimes I feel like I am trying to fly a plane while I'm trying to build the plane at the same time. And I know when I'm doing that, there are a lot of mistakes. I know the quality is not going to be the greatest. I know that there are a lot of things, but I figured that's the only way I can make it happen. But there's another school of thought of somebody close to me who was telling me, no, it's better to make sure that stuff that you have is polished, make sure that what you're putting out is professional, make sure, you know, and that requires, it's different for me. Like I told you, I'm the mule. I go. I have a lot of endurance. I can go. And but it requires me to slow down in a way that is uncomfortable for me because I feel like there's just too much stuff going on. I'm gonna lose too much ground, like you said. So it's interesting that you kind of come on that point of it, that it's better just to kind of get going and not wait for everything to be perfect.
Yeah, and I'm not giving the advice to be reckless.
No, I
Right?
understand that.
There needs to be some sort of thought, some sort of plan, some sort of direction, vision in order to go to. But what I'm saying is, if you look at anything that you started doing, day one is never the same as day 100.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah.
But if you start day one on day 100, you're 100 days behind.
Yeah.
And so imagine what you could have done if you would have just started on day one when things weren't perfect.
Yeah.
And how much you would have learned over those 100 days before you started.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I want to ask you, you talk about you have kids, two small kids, and you work, and we're both lucky in that we have a little bit of flexibility, but still trying to manage running a business and being a present father, being a present husband. That balance can be hard for a lot of. How do you deal with that? Do you have any sort of rules or thoughts on that?
Yeah. Marry well. Marry well. Thankfully, I married well. My wife is a freaking rock star. But outside of that, I think that the notion of perfect balance, it's not possible if you're trying to do something great,
Big, yeah.
right? Whether it's you're trying to be a great father or you're trying to be a great business owner, you can have both. There's nothing saying that you can't be an incredible business owner and be an incredible dad. Mm-hmm. The way that I approach it is that there's seasons to everything. Mm-hmm. And so I don't try to balance things out on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, but there's seasons where, look, more of my time is needed in the business. Like, this is growth mode for the business. And so with that said, I have to focus more of my time and attention on that. Yeah. Okay. And then there's time where, look, it's not the season of growing the business, mm-hmm. right? This is the season of me being more present. Mm-hmm. I feel like I do a good job being present all the time, yeah. But it's never an equal balance.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And I think if you approach it that way and you look back at like what you've accomplished in a year on all sides, rather than like, am I balancing out on Monday? Am I balancing it on Tuesday, or what a week is? You kind of expand time and look at it more of like a longer time horizon. I think you'll struggle less fighting against that balance.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense to find your priorities at that moment, spend your energy there, and then try to just be cognizant of the fact that you got to.
And to follow up with that, communication is so important during those times. Because think about it, I mean, especially as us guys, like, we like to put our head down and just kind of go. Like, we're not like talking about what we're doing. We're not really communicating our plan. We're just going after it, And that's great in our head, but when you're married, when you got kids, like, they don't know what's going on. Yeah. They just see that you're working a lot, and they don't know why. They don't know what your plan is. But if you can actively communicate this and say, like, look, these next few months, here's what I'm working on, and this is the outcome that I want to reach, it's going to be a much easier pill to swallow from your significant other to say, okay, cool. Like, I can deal with this for a couple months because I see the vision, I see where this thing's going. Yeah. And then once that hits, boom, again, we're shifting priorities back.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. It becomes more of an investment than just taking time away. You're recognizing that you're sowing for a greater benefit later.
I think that's the biggest failure in all relationships. It's something that I still got to work on too. Yeah. Like, I am not the greatest communicator when it comes to that. But God, if we could just increase our communication and the way that we speak to, our significant other, even our kids too. Like, our kids need to kind of know what's going on too. They don't need to know the weeds of everything, but they kind of need to understand, hey, why is dad working late? Why is he focused on this? Why is he getting up early? Right?
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you involve everybody as well. And then you want to take time out to enjoy life. Right. And so one of the big things that I do is every single week I plan something to look forward to. Okay.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be anything big. It's not like you have to go on a vacation every week. It could be like a simple movie night.
Yeah.
Like, hey, look, like Friday is our movie night with the family.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know whatever's going on in my life, we are doing movie night on Friday, and I can look forward to that.
Yeah.
It could be a date night with your spouse. You know, it could be a board game. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anything simple of like just small something to look forward to.
Right.
You know, so when days get tough, you say, okay, on Thursday we're doing this. I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
It keeps things exciting.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So let me switch subjects again. Let's talk a little bit about I always ask, I told you in the beginning, I ask two questions to everybody because I'm trying to get an aggregate understanding. One of those I ask is, what's your thoughts on America? What does America represent to you, and what does it mean to you?
Okay. So first and foremost, I am the most non-political individual ever, almost to like my detriment. Like,
Okay.
I don't watch the news. I don't know what's
That's
going
actually
on.
smart.
But I feel dumb sometimes. So I'm like, I'll sit in a group and people are talking about what's going on in the world, and I'm like, God, like, do I tell them I have no clue what they're talking about? Like, it's pretty embarrassing. I need to do better on that side of the house. America, I mean, I just feel like opportunity is probably what comes to my mind when I think of that.
Okay.
Freedom and opportunity. You know, I visited a lot of other places, a lot of other countries. We travel a lot. My wife loves to travel. She was born in Brazil, so we travel to Brazil a lot. And so, you know, I've had the opportunity to kind of see other countries and the way people live. And, you know, I think we take a lot of things for granted here in America, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, what someone might see as like a stupid problem, like that's their problem.
Yeah.
So it's not stupid because it's their problem.
Right.
Right. You could look on the grand scheme of things and be like, oh, there's
First
people
world
starving
problems.
over here,
Yeah,
and you're
yeah,
worried
yeah.
about your latte. Like, okay, I get it, but it's their problem.
Yeah.
Right. So we can call it as ridiculous as it wants. But yeah, I mean, just the opportunity that we have here to be able to start a small business and not have to jump through as many hoops or anything like that. And, you know, the availability to have like this device in our hand that can accomplish so much. There's just really no excuse not to get things done.
Okay.
And I think, you know, what the American dream, the American work ethic was built on was just figuring it out. You know,
Yeah.
we can sit here and try to make as many excuses as we want and reasons why something might not work out, or we could figure out why things will work out
Right.
and just get it done anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So more of when you think of it, it's more of the entrepreneurial spirit of the country and the ability to ascend if you work hard and you put your mind to it and you have some sort of talent.
Yeah, I mean that too. I mean, obviously the school system here in America is a lot greater than other places.
Yeah.
Some other places is probably better too, but I think it just transitions for everything.
Yeah.
Whether it's entrepreneurial, whether it's the corporate world, corporate opportunities. Again, not everyone's built to be an entrepreneur and a business owner. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, there'd be no one to work inside the business, right? There's nothing wrong with being an employee.
Not at all.
It's fantastic, right? You're built for it, you're not built for it. Like, there's no worse or good. So I want to make sure that that's not coming across that way. But just, yeah, there's opportunity everywhere if you seek it out.
100%.
And yeah.
100%. Okay, and I want to ask you one last thing before I got to the last question, and this had to do with franchising. I know that you guys have a franchising program. What have you learned from that? Why did you go that route? What have you learned from franchising?
Sure. So the reason we went to franchising was we knew we wanted to scale. So we could scale, a few different ways. One, we could just open up corporate locations. We could franchise or we could license.
Okay.
So if we were to open up corporate locations, that's fine. Like, we have 100% control over everything. We take 100% of the risk. We take 100% of the reward.
Right.
But it does take a lot of internal resources.
Yeah.
Right. Whether it's money, whether it's staff, time, etc. Then you have licensing, which again is like the CrossFit model.
Yeah.
So where anyone can use our name, but the problem is you have zero control
Right.
because they can use your name, but they can do it any way they want.
Oh, so there are no. It's not like franchising where you have to stay within some certain bounds. Once you
Nope.
license, it's just the brand, and now it's their brand to use or destroy or to grow.
Correct. And so the reason we went with franchising was there's a lot of pieces to what we do that are so vital and so important that if they're not replicated, like the whole system falls apart.
Okay.
So we had to have that control, but we also wanted to give opportunity for other people to be business owners.
Yeah. Okay.
Again, we talk about the American dream, right? And so, we said like, look, there's people out there that want to open up businesses, but might not know how to do it on their own, or might want that like brotherhood, sisterhood, like built-in mentorship, like preset systems and processes. Like, here's the playbook, follow it this way. We'll coach and support you along the way. And that's the main reason we went with franchising.
Okay. Yeah, so it allows you to scale in a way from on a business side, but also allows you to give back to other people who can do it, and it makes it easier for them to get it because they have, like you said, a lot of stuff already. The infrastructure is already in
Correct,
place.
and that's really the most important. And you talked about lessons learned in franchising and in business in general. I think is just like a solid set of systems and processes where things are done the same way every time, right? There has to be consistency across the brand and everything as a whole. Otherwise, you're getting different experiences day to day.
Yeah.
Someone walks in on a Monday, this is their experience. They come in on a Wednesday, this is their experience. They go to Soldierfit here versus there. Things are being run very, very differently. So it has to be set on a foundation of, again, SOPs, systems, processes, all follow the same way. There's a great book for anybody who's interested in business ownership, especially growing to multiple locations, called The E-Myth, written by Michael Gerber.
Okay.
It was actually one of my first business books.
Okay.
If you've never read it and you're interested in business, 100% pick up a copy of that. It talks about the entrepreneurial spirit and, again, how things need to be set in certain orders and replicatable. And then there's a massive lesson that I learned is simplicity scales, complexity fails. Okay. Especially if you want to grow larger. If you have these complex systems that are very difficult to do, it's going to be hard to scale. On a larger scale. You'll just have to have more chess pieces in place to monitor that. Whereas if things are a little bit more simple, then you can scale on a larger basis. And I'm not saying without as much support, but you don't need as much like hands-on oversight. And for a business owner, it just makes it simple because remember, the creator or the founder of the franchise is usually going to be the best at what they do because they built it. Yeah. Like they know it like the back of their hand. Yeah. When you have a franchise coming in, they're coming in with very little to no experience. Yeah. So how do you take that person that has a tenth of the experience that you have and make them successful? Mm-hmm. Well, you can't implement complex processes. Right. Otherwise, they're just not going to get it. Right? There's going to be too much stress because they got to handle all these different things. So you want to make it simple for them.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. All right, lastly, so what's inspiring you these days? What gets you going, gets you motivated as you look forward?
I mean, really, as a dad, it's always my kids. Okay. My wife, my family, relies on me to get up every single day, whether I want to or not. Because there's days, and and everyone here knows, like there's days where you don't want to get up. Yeah. Like you don't want to do the things that you do, but you know that you have to do them. And so obviously I look internally and I think like, look, I have a greater responsibility to my kids because I'm a role model, right? To my wife because I'm a role model, and to my team. Mm-hmm. And anybody else that maybe follows or watches what I do, like, I feel like, I don't want to say I'm an inspiration, right? That sounds terrible. I don't want to be that, but like, I realize that again, there is a greater responsibility on me getting my stuff together and doing it.
And being an example for somebody.
Correct, exactly.
And that's actually a really interesting point because I think that right now, for whatever reason, there's been a push to say I am not a role model. Don't watch me. I'm not perfect, and no one's perfect. No
Yeah.
one. But I always found that it's a fallacy. I don't think you necessarily get to pick to be a role model. People watch you, whether or not they tell you they're watching you or they don't. People are watching, and especially kids, but not only just kids, adults as well. And you want to emulate, the right values, the right things, the right culture, so that when people are looking at you, they have an example, they have a blueprint of where I can say, well, he's doing it this way. He didn't take a chance. This is okay. This is the way you go about it. And whether or not you see yourself that way or not, it's almost immaterial. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant because people are watching.
Yeah.
So it's just whether or not you recognize that and that means something to you, or it doesn't mean something to you.
That's powerful. I mean, one thing that you said, and it's definitely something that I've been working on. You talked about perfection.
Yeah.
Is really vulnerability.
Yeah.
I think in order to inflict change and motivate people, you have to be vulnerable.
Right.
They have to see the messy side of you.
Yeah.
Your mess is your message.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you try to walk around and be perfect all the time, I mean, that's cool. I guess that's good, but that's very surface level, right?
100%.
You're not going to inspire people to develop deep connections until you show your true
Human
self.
side.
Correct.
Right.
Exactly. And so nobody's perfect,
Right.
right? Progression, not perfection, right? As long as we're getting better, but the goal to be perfect, I mean, I don't know if that's unattainable, but
It's unattainable.
It's unattainable. Yeah, let's say what it is, right?
Well, listen, I appreciate you, taking the time just to talk with me. And I know you're a busy man. I don't want to take too much of your time, but this has been very interesting for me, very educational for me. The E-Myth, right?
E-Myth, phenomenal
That's a great
book.
book.
Second book that I would say is How to Influence Friends.
Okay.
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
How to Win Friends.
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Okay.
Yeah, my grandfather read that book every single morning.
Interesting.
Every single morning, 20 minutes, he'd open up his book. He'd have his half a grapefruit with sugar on top. Just remember, yeah. Great book.
Wow, it's crazy. You can find a book that has so many nuggets, as I call them, inside it, that you can look at it every day and still learn from it. You know what I mean? That's great. Okay. Well, thank you again for joining me. You also, as you mentioned, and I'll just mention it here, it sounds like you run training programs for owners, right? I may actually, on the sales part, may actually hit you up for myself.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's very interesting. Good news for me to hear that there is that sort of resource available. And for everybody else, thank you guys for listening. Again, this is Dave Posin, the president of Soldierfit. So if you see the trucks and see the locations, you know the guy behind the scenes or one of the guys behind the scenes. And we will talk to you guys again, probably in about a week. And we are out.